Welcome to Amazing Community's Power Half Hour. Amazing Community is a nonprofit organization that expands the work horizon for women 45 and older. We inform, learn, and connect together as we navigate the present and future of work in this digital world. I'm Ashley Ader-Krotoff, Executive Director of Amazing Community, and I'm pleased to welcome all of you and also to introduce David Miller, cybersecurity expert and chief administrative officer at ImagineSoftware, and he's going to share with us the top 3 ways to protect our privacy.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that kind introduction, Ashley. Thanks to Amazing Community for the opportunity to share a few thoughts with you all today on privacy and security, 2 topics that I'm very passionate about. I'd also like to give a shout out to our marketing rep, our colleague here, who very generously, like Ashley, characterized me as a cybersecurity expert in the event invitation. I've been called a lot of things, some of them potentially uncharitable, but that's for another time, but rarely an expert. Unless, of course, that you use expert with the term procrastinator, which our marketing rep can also probably attest to. So anyhow, I'd own that characterization 100%. Our topics today, privacy and security, quite broad, will barely scratch the surface. I will share with you 3 quick things, and I hope that you'll find the discussion inspiring enough to dig a little deeper on your own. Of course, I also hope that we have an opportunity down the line to reconnect on some of these topics in another forum. So privacy and security from definitional standpoints are very related and also deeply intertwined. When I think about privacy, I think about controlling what information that I share, that we share about ourselves, deciding who we share it with, how we share it, under what circumstances. I don't necessarily think sharing different aspects of ourselves with different groups of people is inauthentic. I think that's just part of who we are and what makes us human. I remember that little diary that sometimes we got as kids. Sometimes I even said it said "Dear Diary" on it, and it had this little flap that looped around and the lock and a little key on a chain. Well, I think that's priming us kind of early in life that there are probably some things we don't want to share with everyone. And we would write them in this little diary, and then we would lock it up. And of course, the lock represents security, right? We want to protect that. So information, things about ourselves is private. We want to be able to control that. And then we also want to make sure that we're secure in our kind of our possessions and our homes and our thoughts, that we're protected physically and emotionally and so on and so forth, but also that our information is secure. So I believe these topics are very related and relatable in many circumstances. So to give you a quick example, let's just say hypothetically, of course, I have an amazing collection of ceramic unicorns, something that I'm very proud of and deeply interested in. And I have a very elaborate arrangement of these in a den in my basement. So my family is familiar with my interests, and a few of my close friends are, but really I don't share that with folks from work. So when I have colleagues over, I lock the basement den up. I want my collection to remain private. It's just for me and my family. Locking the door keeps it secure and safe, right? Don't want anyone to steal it. But let's say, again, hypothetically, I have some friends over for a barbecue and I forget to lock that door. One of my work colleagues' teenagers and their friends wander downstairs. They run across my amazing collection of ceramic unicorns. They love unicorns too. They take some pictures, and immediately it ends up on social media, on open accounts with a couple of hashtags, my dad's cool friend. And it says, my dad's work friend Dave has this awesome collection of ceramic unicorns. Who knew, right? I mean, could this happen? I mean, sure, it could happen. Would I be embarrassed? I might be embarrassed, maybe not because I'm necessarily ashamed of that, but my choice was to keep that interest in private, to keep it to myself and to secure it. When I think about privacy and security, that's an example that I like to throw around a little bit. So you've seen this before, and you're going to see it again in a second, and I know you've heard it. Data is the new oil, right? How many of you have seen and heard that? If you have, put a little 1 in the chat box there, just so that I know. So data is the new oil. And what does this mean about data being the new oil, right? Well, Oil is very expensive. There's a lot of it. We mine it, we look for it, we process it, we sell it. Well, we're kind of doing that with data, if you really think about it in some ways, right? So, technical error. It's going to be okay, I promise. There we go. There are about 60% of the people on the globe are on the internet now, 4.7 billion people. By 2025, 463 exabytes of data is going to be generated each day. That's a staggering number, I think. And I wonder how much of that data we're individually responsible for, right? So anyhow, the little bits of data, there are big pieces of data that are really significant in size, such as videos and music and all of these other things. But there are also bits of data that we don't necessarily think about. They're tiny bits of data that we generate every day as we surf the internet. Now, all this data is not bad. It builds over time. These tiny bits of data that we produce and share, sometimes unknowingly, improve our experience when we're roaming around the internet. However, if you'd like to have a little more control about this data, little bits of data that could be aggregated and over time potentially used to identify you in some way, well, I'm going to offer you a few things to consider. Now, I bet you were wondering why there's a cybersecurity presentation that includes mindfulness in it. Well, I believe that mindfulness and privacy and cybersecurity is a real thing and can be a real thing. And it can help us make better decisions about how we protect our privacy and also make us more secure online. So what do I mean by that? Well, taking a brief pause before we act or before we react to something more likely online may help enhance our situational awareness, for example, right? So situational awareness, what is happening right now? What's going on around me? Is what I'm about to do, does it feel right? Is there something suspicious about it? Take a second and wonder and think before we act. It also gives us just a little time to think about, is someone trying to work us here? Are they employing some social engineering tactics to influence us to do something that might not be in our best interest? A lot of attacks online create this sense of urgency. They request us to take some action right now, or we might lose something. We might upset our boss, a family member, a friend, right? They want to compel us to do something quickly that might not be in our best interest. Taking a moment can also give us a chance to consider some trade-offs of our actions. So a lot of our actions every day have trade-offs. Some of them are not consequential necessarily, but a few are. If I do this, what am I giving up? So I want to get a new backpack. I see an ad for it. I click on the link on my Facebook page. It takes me to a site. Hey, get a 10% coupon, right? If I give them my email address and I save, I don't know, $6, $60 backpack, right? Well, is that really worth the $6? I already get a lot of mail. Do I want more mail? I might want some more discounts. I just have to make this decision. Being a little mindful before you do some of these things, I think, can really help make some decisions that can really benefit your online privacy and also your security. I want to show a couple of quick examples that were highlighted in a blog post earlier this week and also in the event invite. Phishing attacks are very common, and there's several different types. These are personal examples. I have a lot of tiny bits of data on my hard drive with examples of phishing, smishing, and vishing attacks. I just got one this morning, and I procrastinated a good bit, but I wasn't fixing slides this morning, so I didn't have time to include it. But I get these a lot. My email address, the one that I've used for about 25 years, has been in a number of breaches. It's been bought and sold and continues to get passed around, and I just get a lot of spam on that email address. However, I also tend to get some of this stuff in texts now with my phone number, because our phone numbers now are used to identify us to different organizations. We get things through texting. We agree to sign up for it. So we also get texts and we also get voicemails. These attacks are really common. And when you look at the ones on the screen, they do employ these social engineering techniques, right? Hey, I want a MacBook Pro. I love Macs. I've had Apple computers since the mid 80s. Did I really win a MacBook Pro from someone that I don't know? Well, I mean, it's possible, but probably not. The one on the right is my social security number. I'm certain my social security number has been bought and sold as well, but I doubt the Social Security Administration is going to leave a voicemail for me about it. You know, there's a pretty good chance I might actually get a piece of snail mail or a knock on the door, something a little more official than a voicemail. Phishing attacks, vishing and smishing, very common. A quick teardown here of one of my favorite ones from I guess it was from 2 years ago, maybe last year, was this Netflix one. How many folks have Netflix? Probably a lot of us, right? Well, this particular attack hits me where it hurts because I watch Netflix a lot, and so does my family. If my payment details are incorrect, well, guess what? I'm going to have some really upset folks in the house who are going to take me away from doing what other things I might want to do at night to update my billing information. Why don't I take care of this right now? Well, here's why. You can see some of the reasons why. When you hover over the Netflix address at the top, it's actually not Netflix. The links in here are not Netflix. It's looks pretty good, but when you look at the Netflix at the bottom, if you hover over that, it's Netflix, right? It's misspelled. It's so easy to send attacks like this out, particularly if you've bought my email address from somebody on the dark web, right? Because there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of them, and you just spam people with this all day, every day. Someone's going to click it, someone's going to give up their credit card information, and you've made money with just that one person. There's another privacy issue and security issue online that involves something known as cross-site tracking. So what does this mean? Well, those tiny bits of data I mentioned earlier, let's think about a cookie. Again, a small data file. Just about every website you visit leaves a cookie on your machine. They're not inherently bad. Each time you navigate to that site, there's a cookie on there that lets that site owner know you've been there before. It helps them kind of tailor your experience. You don't see the same content over and over. You may get some targeted ads based on things you've looked at before. One of the risks with a lot of the cookies out there is something called cross-site tracking and third-party cookie tracking. So, not to get too technical, first-party cookies are on the site that you navigate to. They set that there. You've willingly gone to that site and accepted that cookie so that the site will function well and that you can have some convenience when you go back. Any ads on that page or other partners that might have some content on that web page can also set a cookie to your machine that you might not necessarily want there for one reason or another. Over time, as you travel around the internet, some of these cookies can be tracked and other sites can learn about your preferences, learn what you looked at, learn what you might have bought. And sometimes that's great. You know, I like backpacks. I didn't sign up for that 10% discount earlier on that website, but I go to Amazon one day and buy the latest book and I see, oh, there's an ad for this backpack here. Wow, that's a pretty good price. Maybe I'll buy it today. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes maybe it's not. So limiting, if your choice is to limit some of the data that you share and to have more control over it, sometimes limiting the amount of cookies that you'll accept can be a privacy enhancing thing. I like a little more control, so I disable cross-site tracking. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how to do that. Here's how we can go about doing that. Again, I mentioned earlier, I declined that MacBook Pro on the text, but if one of you want to offer me a MacBook Pro sometime to do a little freelance work, I might take that instead of a $50 check, really. But Apple makes it very easy with their web browser Safari. If you take a peek, you go up to the Safari menu and you go to Preferences, this is what comes up. It's already selected for me. Now, I know this sounds geeky, but for this presentation, I set up a new account on my Mac. I did fresh installs of all these browsers and everything, just so I could show you what's right out of the box. And Safari right out of the box has this enabled. Now, Google is another really popular web browser. I personally use Google a lot. I have a Gmail account, use the calendar, use a lot of their services, right? However, their approach is slightly different. They also offer the ability. However, when you look at their preference and their settings, their default mode is to block third-party cookies only in this incognito or private mode browsing. That's great. You have to enable that yourself with each session. In order to block the cross-site tracking, you actually have to make that selection with the red circle down here in the arrow. So disabling cross-site tracking could make some websites not necessarily function properly. You might not have the same experience, but I find it good to enhance my privacy, and also haven't really seen anything break because of that. The last thing I want to highlight is keeping your devices up to date. Every year, so I work in the healthcare space, every year the Department of Health and Human Services here releases a lot of data on healthcare breaches. And it's staggering to me how many enterprise breaches are due to poorly configured servers and also lack of patching and updates. From a personal perspective, again, Geek Dad, I'm very attentive to that. And it's a fairly straightforward and easy thing to do. Keeping your devices updated, both your computer, your laptop, your desktop, and also your mobile phones. You get security updates very frequently, you get some new features, and you get some better performance. It's a win, win, win. 3 wins there, right? So security updates are pushed sometimes more frequently than others because of the way that bugs and vulnerabilities are reported. It's a little annoying sometimes. I prefer to do them automatically and then I double check them later, but very straightforward to keep your devices up to date. So again, an Apple example from a Mac. From the Apple menu, system preferences, very easy to see. And if you thought I was kidding about not setting up a separate account, you'll note that I'm not signed into this browser. Again, Geek Dad. Software update right there on the screen. And you'll see that today at 7:04 or yesterday, whenever I did that, the system was up to date. If it's not up to date, it's going to tell me that an update is required. I'm going to get a drop down and I'll see what the update contains. Just about every one of them contains some security enhancement that can help your privacy and security. Windows, also very straightforward. This is from a Windows machine I have. I like to use the Windows key to get to the menu because it's a little not quite as intuitive. And actually, I took that photo a day or two ago and I tried to get all the Pop-Tart crumbs off of it. But if you'll notice in the photo there above the little window, there's a couple of Pop-Tart crumbs, probably blueberry frosted, but I didn't quite get that cleaned off. That's a private thing for me, but I'm sharing with it because we're in a nice little community of people here. So at any rate, for the Windows updates, you click the Windows icon. This opens up and you can open it and see if you're up to date. And if you're not, you can check it again and update right through the menu setting. Very straightforward. And you can also do auto updates there. So 3 quick things. Notice I said slightly increase your privacy online. Ever so slightly. These little decisions add up over time. It's a broad topic with a lot of things to consider, but I think being a little mindful about what we're doing, not just online, but also in life, right? Online, browsing our browser settings, no pun intended, to come up with some cross-site tracking and turn that off, maybe disable third-party cookies, and then of course, keeping devices up to date. I think these things together will slightly increase your privacy online. We have a few minutes left. I appreciate your attentiveness. I apologize for the technical difficulties and for stammering a little bit when I got started, but I'm here for your questions and happy to engage. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David. I think we have some questions in the chat, but I think first let's just open it up while I take a look and see what those are for people who have comments or questions or things they'd like to. Danielle.
So David, that was great. I love your humor. But you should stop eating Pop-Tarts. Um,
Don't judge me.
can you tell me, and probably most people who use Chrome,
Yes.
where's the cross-site tracking in Chrome? I just tried to find it and I don't see it.
Yeah, it's called, I think it's called third-party cookies. Let me go back to that slide and
Okay, thank you.
I'll show you right where it is. They call it block third-party cookies. So it's on
I just
this.
did that and I just wanted to make sure that was the same thing.
Yeah, that's what it is. They have different nomenclature in some of the browsers, but it essentially does the same thing. So those third-party cookies are from a site that you didn't necessarily navigate to. So for example, if you, again, deeply technical, if we looked at your cookie file, actually, this is a good privacy question for you, Danielle. Would you share your cookie file with this group? Probably not, right?
I wouldn't even know how to do that.
You don't have anything to hide, I know, but right. So there's a lot of data in the cookie file, and you can sort of see if you, like in this particular new install here, when I went to a website in Safari even, there were multiple cookies that were set from that site. When I disabled cross-site tracking to see what would happen. And I didn't navigate to anything except maybe the Firefox page to download the browser. So anyway, let's see. Julie says, I share accounts, newspaper and streaming passwords with the close friends and family. Is this wise? Also, how often should I change password? Well, wisdom. There might be some terms of service violations there, but who am I to say that? It's probably not a great idea to share passwords with folks, especially if you might use that password somewhere else. A lot of times you can take some login information, if it's your email and a password, and a lot of times hackers will get that info. There's tons of this stuff on the web anyway. You can look in Pastebin and you can get actual emails and passwords that aren't hashed, that they're in plain text. You can just write programs that go to tons of sites and try that combination again. And if you don't use unique passwords, you might be able to luckily get into a financial account or social media. And then, you sort of own quite a bit of accounts for someone. So wouldn't recommend using that same combination, and make sure that it's just a few close friends and family. Don't encourage that, but if you do it, not gonna judge you for it. Changing passwords, highly recommend you do that routinely, at least every 90 days or so. There are some tips in the blog post from, I guess, Wednesday. Ashley, is that when it was out on Wednesday? There's some resources in that blog post that talks about passwords, unique passwords, password managers, and also multi-factor authentication, which can also help secure accounts. Again, multi-factor authentication sometimes creates just a slight bit more friction, but it can help secure your accounts a little more. Other questions? I'm happy to find a picture of my unicorn collection if anyone's interested. I could direct message that to you.
So there's a question that was sent to me via text.
Okay.
What are some of the definitions of patches and phishing per se?
Okay, so when I mentioned patching, that's really an update. So each day there's tons of vulnerabilities that ethical hackers uncover and organizations uncover, and they may be vulnerabilities that even just tiny minute things that someone could exploit. It's possible, not probable, that could be exploited, but in all of these security releases for enterprise systems, there's a number of patches that come out to kind of patch those little things before they're exploited. Same thing in the consumer market on your machines at home. It's really just an update. It's just fixing a minor bug in the system. So I think, Stella, the other question was around phishing. Yeah, phishing is just an attempt to influence you to give up some sensitive data by slightly manipulating you a little bit using some social engineering techniques. I don't pride myself on it, but I could probably get a lot of personal information from someone standing in a grocery store line, because people love to talk about themselves. And I'm very familiar with a lot of these techniques. Not that I do that, but I could. And that's all that hackers do online. They are students of human behavior many times, and they know which buttons to push. The Netflix thing, great example. We all love to watch streaming video now instead of cable, and we don't want it to expire. they're trying to get me to give up some information. That's it. Password managers. I'm a huge fan of password managers. That was in the chat from Naomi. My personal favorite that I've used for a long time is called 1Password, but there are others that are just as good. I'm just have a preference for that. I've used it for a while. Highly recommend password managers. They generate unique passwords that you don't have to remember and probably can't remember because they're so complex. They have a lot of configurability for different websites, and they work really well with storing sensitive information about your accounts. All of those questions that you answer now for your account, like, you know, your first grade teacher's name, your dog's name, all these other things. You ever notice that sometimes on Facebook, there's some of those quizzes that ask you that? Hey, what street did you grow up on? And the last movie you watched, those two names are your movie star name, right? This data is just out there and available and can be aggregated and mined and associated with folks. And it just makes it too easy. So I think for me, I like to make it a little more difficult.
David, there's one last question I think we have time for. Do you see it in the chat? The world of cybersecurity is complex and constantly changing. If you had 1 to 2 pieces of main advice or recommendations for me to focus on, what would they be? What would biggest ROI?
So a couple of things. So I love social media. I think it's been a great boon for building community and staying in touch with folks. You choose what to share, and it's set up to encourage you to share just about everything. I think that mindfulness around social media and what you share on public facing social media sites is probably going to give you a pretty big ROI in and of itself, because you're making the data available to really whoever wants it, and you're not sure what a friend, colleague, a group you're part of is going to do with that. If you notice the tons of screenshots that are on Twitter, you know, it's kind of this gotcha society. We're just waiting for someone to tweet something in the heat of the moment that they're emotional about, and it lives on in perpetuity in different forms, right? I think that's one thing that can really help with privacy and security. Let's see, the second thing, from a technical perspective, I would have to go with learning how the security settings on your hardware and your applications work. So configuring things properly, taking time to look at the default settings and see if those are things that you want to change or not. But also with software and apps in particular can be really leaky with data. So sometimes, understanding how those configuration settings work can be a real helpful as well. There's just so many things to do. Picking a couple is hard, and none of this is going to guarantee that I'm not going to get hacked or fall victim to it, or my network's going to be breached. There's just no guarantee. I'm just looking to make myself a little more secure, maybe, than you. Right.
Thank you so much, David.
Other questions? Thank you.
I think we're, time flies when you're having fun and things are so interesting. So it's almost time for us to part, and we'd love for you to give us our feedback. You'll see the link to our survey in the PowerPoint slide, and you can also scan. Thanks, QR code. It was on the tip of my tongue. And I just want to highlight some of our upcoming events. We have Converse, Connect, and Community upcoming on June 15th, going from need work to got work. And that actually will be the launch of what we're calling a circle, where the women who participate in this Converse Connect community then continue the conversations and come up with action plans together over time in our first amazing community circle. The next Power Half Hour on the 18th of June is creating a LinkedIn headline that gets noticed. And Danielle Hughes is here with us today, so she can wave. Yes, hi, Danielle. And that's going to be great. I've been in one of Danielle's workshops previously, and she always has really targeted, actionable advice and we appreciate that. Our second Converse Connect community is on the 25th of June, how to recognize an inclusive workplace. Extremely important. And the third Converse Connect community is Journey to Unforgettable Experiences. Now, I'll have to say, I don't know what that is, but it sounds super intriguing. And I can't wait to go. It's the day before my 53rd birthday. So I will be there. And I hope you will too. Please register at Amazing Community. And again, who are we? We are a community of women 45 and over, navigating the present and future of work together in this digital world. And our objective is to engage these women to create and curate resources, services, and opportunities to support each other as we work in this digital world. Together, we inform, learn, and connect. And let's give David a huge hand of applause. And then if you want our newsletter and this kind of thing, we've got that information there. So thank you, David, so much. And thanks everyone for your fantastic questions.
Thank you.
And I know what I'm doing after we hang up and all those things that I put off or didn't know about.